Hello, everybody. Thank you all for being here. This is by far the hardest series we've ever done. Analyzing stocks or crypto is cakewalk compared to this. But let's jump in. This is the third part in the three-part series. And without further ado, let's just go through this. As you know, for those of you who are new to this series and aren't caught up, we are trying to help people become better investors. And this, as I always say, investing is a blood sport. For every winner, there's a loser. But a key to success is knowing exactly who you are. And this is a framework to help you do that. Obviously, people will talk about some of the great investors and everything else, but this is the community results, what the community looks like, and the playbook profiled how to overcome blind spots and weaknesses to build every day to become a better investor, better trader, more successful, financially free, etc. So this is work to go through this. Big thank you to the team, Dr. Watson, a whole bunch of other team members behind the scenes. We've been working on this for months now. So let's go. The story today basically is what it takes to be a great investor. And many say sometimes it's the right temperament. I think it was Mr. Emerson wrote in his essay, it's called Experiments, temperament is the iron wire on which beads are strung. And Ray Dalio says it's all about knowing your blind spots. So this is, again, the fifth video on this topic we've done, third and final one in this series. And we'll give you a refresher on where we are, what we showcased so far, how to identify key blind spots, profile the community, break it all down, slice it and dice it, and show you the playbook as to how you can overcome weaknesses. This is going to be a big one. So let's go. So first of all, the traits of winning investors all across the board, no matter where you look, they all typically have T, N, and J. It doesn't matter if you're introverted or extroverted, but you got to be thinking, you got to be intuitive, and you got to be judging. And you can see that all of our top investors had that in the past. And if you don't, we'll show you how you can shore up that gap. So next, a quick reminder of what N, T, and J means. N are intuitives. They prefer to focus on possibilities in the big picture, easily see patterns, value innovation, etc. 74% of top investors are intuitive. 100% of top investors are thinkers. They tend to make decisions using logical analysis, objectively weigh pros and cons, and value honesty, consistency, and fairness. And 65% are judges. They tend to be organized and prepared and like to make and stick to plans and are comfortable following most rules. Now, the flip side of that is the other side of the coin. S, F, and P. What happens if you are S? Well, a sensor. These are realistic people. They like to focus on facts and details and apply common sense and past experience to come up with practical solutions to problems. Yes, sounds great. Feelers. 0% of feelers tend to be in the top categories of investors, but we have ways of overcoming that. Now, they tend to be sensitive and cooperative and decide based on their own personal values and how others will be affected by their actions. They kind of overthink things too much. And then finally, perceivers. They prefer to keep their options open, act spontaneously, and they don't really like making plans. And only 35% of top investors are feelers. So let's jump in. Let's talk about the community and the profile of the whole organization. A big thank you to everybody who filled out the survey. But 4,156 people filled it out. 599 of them are female. 3,557 are male. Remember, my community is about 11% female. So that means women fill out more surveys than men. Good for the ladies out there. And the breakdown is about 53% North America, 29% Europe, 10% Australasia, and 5% Asia, 1% South America, 1% Africa. So that is the demographics. Now, what was really interesting is when you look at the personality types of the world and how that compares to our community is super fascinating. So this is one of the many things that we uncovered in this study. So if you look at the world, you can see that INTJs, who make up the most successful investors, only make up 3% of the world population. That was interesting. But wait till you see the community. This is the Invest Answers community. 24.4%, nearly a quarter, are INTJ. That is a staggering delta between the typical amount in the world. And also, you'll notice the community is heavily introverted and the community is heavy N, T, and J. We have a much higher weighting based on this. And this tells us that people who are N, T, and J, they know they are good investors and they always, always seek to sharpen their tools. Think about that. And good investors always want to get better. So people who aren't good investors, watch what the good investors do. And that's what a big part of this is about. Now let's look at the global personality types in men. 4.2% of all men in the world, not in this community, are INTJ. 16.7% are ISTJ, etc., etc. So you can see the vast majority. ISTJ is the dominant trait for males. But when we look at the community, the Invest Answers community, it is staggering. This is mind-blowing. Again, males, 24.7% INTJ. And INTJ, as we know, is good for investing. Now, we have 6.2 times the normal weighting of this profile within the community. Again, these good investors know they're good investors and they're always looking to get better, which is super interesting. ISTJ is smaller than the world representation as well. The corollary of that, we're very overweight these NTJ folks. Now let's look at the ladies. The ladies here, for women in the world, ISFJ, ESFJ is the most common with about 17.4% and 14.4% of females. Note, INTJ is only 1.9% of women in the world. But guess how many are in this community? Unbelievable. Our female community is 23% INTJ. And that is 12.1x the typical load for planet Earth, which is stunning. And again, a reminder, NTJ is critical. And this is just was very, very interesting to us as we go forward. Now, remember, if you're not INTJ, it doesn't mean you're not a good investor or you cannot be a good investor, but you need to be aware of where you need to strengthen up your weaknesses. Now, let's look at the IA community delta to the world. Quick comparison visually of how the personality types compare. Again, we see we are very heavily skewed, the community, towards INTJ, INFP, INTP, ENTJ, INFP, and ENTP. And these are all good investor types, which means they are seeking out investor information as, again, to sharpen their pencils all the time. And most underrepresented are ISFJ females, ESFJ females, and ESTJ males. For some reason, they're not interested in investing. So a quick dig down to the underrepresented groups in this community. Of the nearly 4,200 respondents in the survey, only 3 females under 21. And of those, 0 had F in their personality. And out of the 4,156 respondents, only 33 were young adult, aged 21 to 30 females. And of those, only 16 had F in their personality. And that's less than half of 1% of the community. Compared to the world, feelers represent 70% of females. And this shows you that young female feelers are pretty much missing out from our community. And I don't know where they are, what they're doing. They need to be focused on this and less focused on TikTok and Instagram and other stuff as well as we go forward. Again, not giving any personal advice here, but I thought that was stunning. Now, a quick reminder of the success drivers for top investors. Number 1, most important, you need to be analytical. Number 2, you need to be focused. Number 3, time preference. The longer your time preference, the better. And risk tolerance. The higher the risk you take, the better you tend to do over time. Now, remember one thing on time preference. Yesterday, I did say, I said I expected Bitcoin to rumble because I saw some things happening and my time preference was very narrow. I said there's an 80% chance we were going to hit 48K Bitcoin by midnight Pacific time. I was off, but now it's rallying. So the longer time you have, the more accurate you can be. And I was trying to make a very brave call, like projecting what's going to happen over the next 12 hours. And that is stupidness, but I gave it a shot because I knew I was going to talk about time preference. The longer the time you have, the more successful you will be. So be patient. I always say patience, 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 everybody. Critical to success. Now let's look at the community, males versus females, and how they stack up. This also is super interesting. You can see here, I wrote red boxes around what we believe is very, very important. First of all, in terms of time frame, our males and females are equivalent in terms of their preference, which was stunning. Second of all, if you look at our females, they're more intuition driven, and males are more quant driven. Very interesting. Also, if you look down the line, you see females have a broader focus and men have a narrower focus. Again, sometimes narrow focus is a little bit better. And females are more risk averse and than their male counterparts. So that was also very, very interesting when we break that down, how women and men are different in how they approach investing. Now let's look at net worth and personality types. This kind of was super interesting as well. Again, this is the community, and we're benchmarking the community against the community, not against anybody else. The highest net worth community profiles are ENTJ and ESTJ, which is bang on because that's in line. The ENTJ part, again, it doesn't matter if you're extroverted or introverted, the ENTJ is important, and they typically make the best investors, and that shines through in the survey that they have the most net worth. Now, INTJ are typically the top investors, but they didn't have the highest net worth in this study at all. The ENTJ ones did. And I have, I'll zoom out for that. I think part of the reason for that is extroverted people sometimes are better at wheeling and dealing and negotiating and getting higher up the ranks in corporate environments, and therefore they generate more net worth. But not when you're a true investor, when all you do is sit in a box and just study stuff, then it doesn't matter. But that's probably one of the reasons why this is the case. And note, as we concluded in part 2, again, I versus E doesn't matter. N and TJ actually does. That rings through to where we are. Now, if we look at a refresher on the IA investor styles, a quick reminder here. Everybody can be anyway and still be very successful. So not every individual out there will fit into a box, but we built our own special 16 boxes, and we mapped investors to those boxes. And again, the letters all mean something else. Like L and S are long-term and short-term time preference. Long-term tends to be more successful. I is for intuition, Q is for quant. Quant tends to be more successful over time. N is narrow versus B, broad focus. The narrow focus, high focus tends to be more successful over time as well. And T versus A, and that's risk taking versus risk averse. Again, the more risk you take, the better your returns. So you'll see where, Warren Buffett, LQNA, Cathie Wood, LQNT, Stanley Druckenmiller, LQBT, Ray Dalio, LQBA, etc., etc. You get an idea, but you see some of the best investors are in the top right corner of this matrix as we go forward. But again, wait till the playbook comes. It's coming next. Second is the personality type per our 16 matrix box. This was interesting. Again, I have to mention as well, a caveat, we are measuring our community against our community. And what we have learned is a very sophisticated investor group is typically not representative of the general population. And we have a lot of very sophisticated investors in this community. And here we see LIBT as having the highest net worth, and SINA the least amount of net worth. Remember, let me get this right. I get all these letters. LIBT is long-term, intuitive, broad-focused, and risk-taking. They seem to be the most successful in our community. And SINA is short-term, intuitive, narrow-focused, and risk-averse. Again, it all, the data all points in the same direction. So let's get to the fun part. Finally, one last graphic. Sorry, forgot about this one. Here you see the benchmark time preference, benchmark analytic preference, benchmark focus, and benchmark risk appetite with the dotted lines versus where the community breaks out by personality type. And if you are above the line, for example, with time focus, if you're above the line, you're longer time preference. And only ENFP, ISFJ, ESTK, ESFJ, and ESFP had longer time horizon. When it comes to the analytical folks who are more analytical, only ISTJ and ISTB are more analytical from our optimal benchmark. And for the focus people, only ENTP and ISTP had more narrow focus from our benchmark. And finally, risk appetite, only ENTJ, ISTP, ISFP, and ESTP had more risk appetite. Again, if you haven't studied your own Myers-Briggs profile, make sure you do. Make sure you compare yourself to this and then step back and reassess what you need. Now, this is another interesting piece. The final community, male versus female profile. Again, to summarize, women in the community are more patient, men are slightly more analytical, and the men focused on fewer assets and have more risk appetite. So that is kind of like the high level summary between our males and females in the audience. One final thing, investor profile by age. This is the highest time preference is actually people in their 30s. This was a huge surprise for us. So the time preference is the blue line at the top, and we were shocked by that. And they were young and yet thinking long-term and more patient. Super interesting. Now, the analytical approach scores, which is the orange line, you can see here, the younger you are, the less analytical you are. But as you grow older, more mature, you become more analytical. And then once you get to 61 plus, you have less time for that. You got other things to focus on, and you're not studying charts, etc. as much. But it was really interesting to see. And also the gray line, this is the younger folks out there. Again, when they are very young, they are very, very focused. But as you get older, you look at more different types of assets. So for example, as you get older, you have more wealth, and maybe you've got more real estate, more equities, more crypto, more who knows what out there. Bars of gold. And that's why the focus actually diminishes over time. So again, this makes complete sense. Now, finally, the last piece is regarding the risk appetite, the yellow line at the bottom. You can see here, this was super interesting. Obviously, the younger you are, they take a lot more risk. And as you go a little older and older, their tolerance for risk falls down until you start getting to 60 plus again. Then it starts going up. So this one was kind of confusing. Do I see the way the yellow at the bottom is like a big smiley face? And there's two reasons for this. One, you have so many assets, you can play with more risk. It's like, going to the casino when you're 60 and say, hey, I'm going to roll the dice in some crypto or whatever else. Or second, which is more concerning to me, is you don't have enough to invest to retire to achieve your goals. So you take more risk. I'm not sure which one it is. It depends on who completed the survey, but they are the explanations for those actual numbers there. So finally, before we get to the playbook, this is the investor profile by income and net worth. And here you can see people that make more money and have higher net worth, have a higher time preference, take more risk, but are also more broad focused, i.e. like we discussed before, you got more assets as you get older, as your net worth increases. Now your focus being more broad is interesting, and we believe this is a function of having more money and more assets and more investment categories. Now, the analytical approach was inconclusive for this community as we stratified by income and net worth, but everything else totally was. So now this is the very important part. This is the playbook. This will help you get inside kind of your own head and shore up any weaknesses you may have. So first of all, let's go to the S's. We know that the intuitive people typically make better investors, but what happens if I am sensing and I am very sensitive? Well, sensing traits, they resist change. They rely heavily on prior knowledge, facts or experience, like what's worked in the past. They tend to be stuck in a rut sometimes, and this helps shape their future. Now, our personality analysis determined that the majority of top investors possess that N intuitive quality. And this comes as no surprise because successful investors involves pattern recognition when taking in new information, and intuitive types visualize and seek out patterns and possibilities. Remember, that's why TA is so important. We'll talk more about that in a second. But sensing types prefer practical attention to new information. Although you can switch from sensing to an intuitive type, there are steps you can take, and we're going to go through them right now. By the way, if you look at some of these descriptors we threw on there, You get a feel for where you fit. You don't even have to do a Myers-Briggs. Just look at this picture and you'll know if you're S or N or whatever else. Now, this is the playbook. First of all, step number one, if you are a sensor, how can I use my intuition? Number one, you got to get out of your comfort zone. This is a very good quote from J.D. Houston. If you want something in your life that you've never had, you're going to have to do something you've never done. You've got to make yourself uncomfortable, make it happen. Second step, this is probably the key takeaway. And I've spent a lot of my life trying to convince people to buy Google years and years ago, to buy Netflix, to buy Tesla, to buy Bitcoin. And most of the time, I'm not successful because they can't see. They can't see what I was able to see. So let's talk about this. S, sensor. How can I use my intuition? So number one, you realize that there is more than one way to look at something. For example, talk about Tesla again. Between sensing versus intuitive, a sensing person will see, oh, Tesla, they make electric cars. An intuitive person will say, hold on, that's an AI company that builds self-driving vehicles. See the difference? When you are intuitive and you can see the future, then you have a very good chance of identifying good investment opportunities early, getting in hard. That's how you make really, really good money. So remember, if you have, just think about the Tesla example. If you struggle with that, or if you look at a tree, like it could be a big tree with lots of leaves. A sensing person say that's a big tree with lots of leaves. An intuitive person say, hang on, that genus doesn't belong in this neighborhood, or in this climate, or in this region, or whatever. That's kind of the difference. Okay, step 3. How can I use my intuition? This one is interesting. First, you can do things like you got to push the boundaries of how you view information. Watch others do it. Let me step out for a second. Like, it always blew my mind how many like YouTubers do TA videos, or they show charts. But that's one element of it. But again, it is an important element, because if you don't like looking at charts, I urge you to look at them, because that'll help you identify patterns. That'll help you identify entry points and exit points, and for different investments. So study that technical analysis. Listen to how others interpret data and observe their approach to finding patterns, and what questions are analysts asking themselves to come to their conclusions. Try be like them a little bit. Not all of them, of course, but the good ones. And practice by making small, harmless decisions where you may or may not have all the facts you'd like to have. Again, step out of your comfort zone. Okay? Now, next category. I am a feeling person. How can I remove emotion when I invest? Key values of feelers are, tactfulness, love, mercy, praise, people-oriented, etc. And the traits of the thinking quality people are logic, objectiveness, frankness, truth, justice, critique, very task-oriented. But here, when you look at these guys, our personal analysis has determined that the majority of top investors possess that T thinking quality. Again, no surprise here. Thinkers use logic and reason to make decisions, and with critical thinking skills and a more black and white approach, to just be like the machine, as I always say. Now, feelers make decisions based on feelings, often on impulse. We'll talk about impulse in a minute too. There's no room for emotion in investing. Be the machine. It's a blood sport. And although you can't switch from feeling to a thinking type, there are tools you can do to help you start becoming more that way. And the first one is this. And comment below if anybody has ever felt FOMO. This basically is, you recognize an emotional pull when this happens. FOMO. If you feel FOMO, if you feel it hard, you're probably a feeling type. And that is the kiss of death in investing. In investing, never chase, replace. Be in before things move, and never feel the urge to have that fear of missing out. If you do, take a step back. Recognize your emotions as they occur, and you can learn to prevent yourself from making impulsive decisions that may lead to unwanted situations, like buying at all-time highs or other things like that. Very important. Step number 2. This is simple. Have a plan. Build a plan. Create your personal financial goals, whatever it may be. Goal-based investing removes the possibility of making short-term decisions that may have a negative impact on your long-term objective. Like an example that I've been trying to share with the community since the beginning, like 14 months ago when I started this, was, try achieve one whole coin. It's gotten a little harder over time to do that, but that's an example of a goal. Write it on your bedroom mirror or whatever, and just live to it every day and build a plan how you get there and your time. And that will bring about a lot of discipline that will remove a lot of the emotion from the decision making process. And number three, how can I remove emotion? Learn to move on from loss. This is an interesting one. The nature of investing, brings about winning and losing. And if you lose, recognize when you're feeling upset or angry. And humans don't like to lose. They like to win, they don't like to lose. And when they're winning, sometimes they don't like to take profits. We'll talk about that in a minute too. But don't let emotions take its course. If you do make a loss, move on from it. Learn from it. That's what Ray Dalio always says as well. Learn. If you're not making mistakes and if you're not learning from your mistakes, you're going to lose real fast. But if you do, like I made that big mistake when I was 21 years of age, and that made me who I am today. I said, that's never going to happen to me again. Never. That was painful. And that's how I learned from it. And before I jumped back into the market, I studied like you wouldn't believe to make sure I could recoup my loss. I wasn't going to rest. I wasn't going to go to the grave until I recouped, and things worked out. Now, step 4, easy one. Do not invest while you are emotional. Very simple. If you don't feel like you're in the right headspace, if you are worried, angry, sad, etc., don't don't go to your exchange. Don't buy anything. Again, that's what'll mess you up. Meditate, go for a run, think things over, and be very, very patient. That's one thing that I'm very proud of. I will wait. I will wait a year. I'll wait 2 years. I'll wait 5 years to get into something at my price level. I don't care. And if it doesn't hit, I don't care. There's plenty of other things to invest in. So again, it all ties back to the FOMO stuff as well. But be in the right headspace and have that structure and discipline to make sure that you are there. So next category, okay? I am perceiving. What does that mean? So perceiving traits, they're people who are flexible, loosey-goosey. They like to keep things open-ended. They make choices only when a gun is held to their head, only when it's necessary. Now, our studies judged that judges are the best investors, okay? Perceivers, not necessarily. Now, judges are very organized, very structured. They take charge of their environment. And perceivers tend to shy away from deadlines, timetables, making dates, often putting off making commitments. They like to keep their options open, which is a cool thing if you can. But although you can't switch, there are steps you can take. So first of all, step 1, practice decision making. No matter how small it is, practice. Practice doing something you've been putting off. Maybe filing your taxes. There's something that everybody hates to do. Do it. Make a decision. Make a date to be completed by. Make a date with a family member or a friend. Reach out to somebody and solidify the timelines that you make them. In investing, there's no room for indecisiveness or waiting till you're forced to make a decision. So what I like to do is have limit orders in place. If I have a price that I want to get something at, for example, Nvidia, low 200s, I'll wait a year for it to hit that. I'll eventually come down and fall into my trap. Then I get it. But I will not deviate from my plan. So, number 2, recognize when you're holding a failing asset. So this is one that the perceiving people really have a tough time with. I'm not sure exactly why, but I hate to say dog with fleas, but if you have a dog with fleas, sometimes you need to be aware of it. So next time you're down 20% on a token or asset or whatever, consider selling, reassess your strategy, reassess your investment thesis, why you got in and where you think it's going. Will it ever recover? And if you decide to hold, first time, if you decide to hold and you wait for it to fall another, say 10, 15, 20%, second time, I will not be happy if you don't bail. You got to draw that line in the sand and see how filling you're willing to hold the dip. There's so many people that are holding things like ICP from the very top all the way down, and they're still holding because now it's like, well, and you have a couple of dollars left in the investment, I might as well hold on forever. But again, don't let that happen. Okay. Remember to pull out of bad assets real fast. Step 3. Now, this is the corollary to what I just discussed. Ruthlessly prioritize profit taking. If you are unable to sell the top, this is where, so just like your entry price, you got your exit price. I used to say years and years ago with equities, I knew my exit before I entered. Same thing with crypto. Have your staged exit approach all laid out. Have your sell orders in place. Take the emotion, take the decision making out of the decision. Sounds weird. And that's how you lock in profits. Again, when you are an investor, you do not make any money till you sell and make a profit. Okay? Holding an unrealized capital gain doesn't mean anything till you actually execute the trade to sell. And watch for clues that your asset may be on the decline, and look for the overall market condition to help you make decisions. Now, there are some exceptions to that rule as well. Things that you want to hold long term, like Bitcoin, like Tesla, you don't want to sell those things. You want to hold them until the investment thesis change. So remember, take profits when you can. So everybody, that was a big mouthful. So I hope you got something from this. If there's anything that you want us to do, if we missed anything that you believe you need, drop a comment below. There's so much more to do, but it requires a ton of work to just get to this level and simplify very complex human emotions. But remember, if you have any of those traits that are kind of missing, build a plan. Find ways to become more decisive. Find ways to become more analytical. Find ways to make more decisions. And you will be successful. I promise you massive, massive changes in results real quick. So with that, everybody, thank you to the mods in the chat. Thank you to the community. Thank you to everybody who donated things for our furry friends. We love you all. I love doing this. Big thank you to the team as well behind the scenes. See you all tomorrow. It's Octa Unchained Technical Analysis Tuesday. See you guys and gals. Bye.